I was 8 months pregnant when my ex-husband's father handed me a statement calling me mentally unstable and told me if I didn't sign it by Friday, the women's shelter I worked for would lose everything. I was also standing barefoot on a paper towel in a medical center bathroom because my left sneaker had just betrayed me in a puddle, which felt unfairly on brand for my life at that point. The bathroom at Jefferson Women's Clinic smelled like bleach, hand soap, and the faint panic of women trying not to cry in public. My belly pressed against the sink while I balanced on one foot, trying to dry my sock under the hand dryer. The machine roared like a jet engine and did absolutely nothing useful, which made it feel like most men I had dated before 30. Then I heard his voice outside the bathroom door. Grace Miller. My whole body went still. Nobody said my name like Warren Whitmore. He made it sound less like a person and more like a problem he had already paid someone to solve. I stepped into the hallway, holding my wet sneaker in one hand, my tote bag sliding off my shoulder, my daughter kicking hard under my ribs, as if she had also decided this man was bad news. Warren stood beside the glass elevators in a dark wool coat, silver hair perfect, shoes polished, expression calm enough to be criminal. 2 donors from the Whitmore Foundation stood behind him with polite smiles frozen on their faces. And next to him, looking like guilt had learned to wear a gray scarf, was my ex-husband, Nathan. For 2 years, I had not seen either of them outside of old nightmares and the occasional charity magazine photo where Warren pretended to care about poor women under excellent lighting. Nathan's eyes dropped to my stomach. His face changed. Shock. Confusion. Something softer that almost looked like regret. Almost. Warren smiled first. Of course he did. Well, he said, glancing at my belly, then at the sneaker in my hand, still making dramatic entrances. I'm barefoot in a medical hallway, Warren. If this is drama, it's very low budget. One of the donors looked away too quickly. Nathan swallowed, but said nothing. That silence was familiar. Nathan had always been good at standing near cruelty without touching it, as if proximity didn't leave fingerprints. What do you want? I asked. Warren looked mildly offended, like I had skipped the part where I thanked him for ruining my life with excellent posture. We need to discuss Willow House. The name hit me harder than it should have. Willow House was the shelter where I worked as a case manager. 3 floors of peeling paint, donated strollers, crying babies, burnt coffee, and women who still showed up for each other, even after the world had done its best to make them disappear. We were waiting on a major grant from the Whitmore Foundation to open 6 more rooms for pregnant women and mothers fleeing violence. 6 rooms meant 6 doors that locked, 6 beds, 6 women who would not have to sleep in cars. Warren reached into his coat and pulled out a cream envelope. I stared at it. No. You haven't even read it? I've known you long enough to mistrust stationery. His smile thinned. Nathan finally moved. Grace, just take it. I looked at him. Really looked. At the man who once promised to choose me, then folded the first time his father raised an eyebrow. That's the first thing you're saying to me after 2 years? His jaw tightened. This doesn't have to become hostile. I laughed once. Sharp, ugly, pregnant laughter I had learned could sound like either joy or a threat. This one leaned threat. Your father cornered me at my prenatal appointment with an envelope. Hostile arrived before I did. Warren stepped closer and lowered his voice. The city is reviewing several community partnerships. You may be asked questions about concerns you raised during your marriage into our family. My marriage into your family? I repeated. Warren, it was a divorce, not a failed internship. His eyes hardened. 2 years ago, he had called me unworthy of the Whitmore name. Then when I found strange transfers connected to the shelter funds, he helped turn me into the unstable wife. The jealous wife. The woman who couldn't be trusted. A chopped-up security video had made it look like I was sneaking around with a coworker. Nathan believed him. Or maybe believing him was easier. Warren pushed the envelope into my hand. You will sign the statement inside by Friday. It confirms that your previous concerns were emotional misunderstandings following your separation from Nathan. My fingers went cold around the paper. And if I don't? His eyes flicked to my stomach. Stress is dangerous this late in pregnancy. My daughter kicked again. Hard. Even unborn, she had better instincts than my ex-husband. Warren continued. And the foundation will reconsider its funding to Willow House immediately. I would hate for vulnerable women to suffer because you refuse to let go of old bitterness. There it was. Not just my reputation, not just my past. 6 rooms, 6 women, 6 locks on 6 doors. I looked at Nathan. You knew about this? He looked away. That was answer enough. A nurse called from down the hall. Grace Miller? Rain tapped against the windows. The elevator dinged. My wet sock stuck coldly to the tile, and for one strange second, I wanted to laugh because of course my life-altering threat would happen while I was holding one shoe like a confused Cinderella with back pain. Warren leaned closer. Friday, he said. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Then he walked away, Nathan following him, like a shadow too ashamed to admit what it belonged to. I stood there with the envelope in my hand and my baby shifting inside me. When I finally opened it in my car, the first line made my throat close. I, Grace Miller, acknowledge that my previous concerns regarding Whitmore Foundation were the result of emotional instability following my divorce. Underneath it, already typed neatly, was my full legal name. And below that, a blank line waiting for my signature. I threw the envelope onto my kitchen table so hard that my husband, Marcus, dropped the spatula into the skillet and splattered scrambled eggs across the stove like a tiny breakfast crime scene. Okay, he said, turning the burner down. Either that paper offended you personally, or we are finally declaring war on brunch. It's Warren. The humor left his face before I finished the name. Our apartment in South Philly was small, warm, and aggressively normal in a way I had worked very hard to earn. A crooked bookshelf by the window. A baby swing still in its box because Marcus said he wanted to assemble it with patience, which apparently meant staring at it every Saturday like it owed him money. A half-folded basket of tiny onesies sat on the couch, all yellow and white, because we had both panicked in the baby aisle and forgot colors existed. I stood in the middle of that ordinary room with one swollen foot still damp, holding the statement that could destroy my job, the shelter, and every woman waiting for a safe bed. Marcus wiped his hands on a dish towel and came closer. He was still in his EMT uniform, dark blue shirt wrinkled from a 12-hour shift, exhaustion sitting under his eyes. But when he looked at me, he was fully there. What happened? I handed him the paper. He read the first line, then the second. His jaw shifted, in that quiet way it did when he was trying not to scare me with how angry he was. He gave this to you at the clinic? In the hallway, I said, with Nathan standing right there doing his best impression of a guilty coat rack. Marcus looked up. Nathan saw you pregnant? Yes. And said? Almost nothing. He's very committed to the brand. I wanted the joke to land. It barely did. My voice cracked at the end, and I hated that. I hated that Warren could still reach into my present and shake something loose inside me. Marcus set the paper down carefully, like it was contaminated. You're not signing this. I know. But I pressed both hands to the edge of the table. The wood was scratched from years of other tenants, other dinners, other lives. But if I don't, Warren pulls the grant. 6 rooms, Marcus. Camila was going to start intake next month. Tasha's already on the list. He knew Tasha. 22, 7 months pregnant, left her boyfriend after he shoved her into a refrigerator and then cried harder about the dent than about her bruises. Marcus closed his eyes for a second. That bastard. That is disrespectful to bastards. He almost smiled, but then he looked back at the statement. This says you were emotionally unstable after the divorce. My throat tightened. There it was, the old language. Warren's favorite perfume, concern with a base note of character assassination. 2 years ago, after I questioned the foundation transfers, everything around me started shifting. Nathan stopped coming home before midnight. Warren started inviting me to lunches, where he smiled in public and sliced me open in private. People at charity events tilted their heads when they spoke to me, as if grief or suspicion might be contagious. Then came the video, a security clip from the Whitmore Foundation office. Me and Daniel Price, a volunteer coordinator, leaving through a side hallway after hours. The clip started with Daniel's hand on my lower back and ended with us disappearing through a door. It did not show the frightened woman inside that room, hiding from her husband in the parking garage. It did not show me calling a cab. It did not show Daniel stepping between her and the man pounding on the door. Warren made sure of that. Nathan watched the edited clip in silence. Then he looked at me like I had become someone he was embarrassed to know. I never forgot that look. I packed while he was still deciding whether to believe me. Back in my kitchen, my baby shifted under my ribs, slow and heavy, like she was trying to remind me I was not back there anymore. Marcus reached for my hand. Grace. I'm fine. You are squeezing the table like it owes you child support. I let go. A laugh slipped out of me, small and wet around the edges. Then I cried, which was deeply annoying because I had mascara on and pregnancy had already taken my waistline. It did not need my eyeliner, too. Marcus came around the table and wrapped me in his arms. He didn't tell me to calm down. He didn't tell me I was overreacting. He just held me while the eggs burned quietly behind him, giving the apartment a tragic diner smell. My phone buzzed on the table. Unknown email. The subject line read, "Regarding your health and professional future." Marcus saw it at the same time I did. I opened it with my thumb shaking. Grace, silence would be healthier for you and the baby. The foundation expects your signed statement by Friday at noon. Failure to cooperate may affect Willow House's pending funding and require us to revisit prior defamatory claims you made against Mr. Whitmore and his family. I read it twice. By the third time, fear had started turning into something colder. Marcus took the phone from my hand. Forward this to Camila. I nodded. Then I picked up the envelope, folded it once, and slid it into a drawer beside grocery coupons, batteries, and the tiny screwdriver from the crib box. Warren wanted me scared. Fine. But he had made one mistake. He had put the threat in writing. Nathan called me the next morning while I was standing in the Willow House supply closet counting diapers and trying not to throw a package of wipes at the wall. That was not a metaphor. I had one pack of newborn diapers in my hand, 3 more on the shelf, and a level of rage that probably qualified as cardio. His name flashed on my phone like a bad decision with a ringtone. I let it ring once. Twice. Then I answered, because apparently pregnancy had made me curious and stupid in equal measure. Grace, he said softly. I hated that voice, not because it was cruel. Cruel would have been easier. Nathan's voice was warm in a way that made you remember he had once been kind, or at least very good at pretending. What do you want? I was hoping we could talk. We are talking. In person. I looked down at my belly. I'm busy growing a human and preventing your father from gutting a women's shelter. My social calendar is packed, he exhaled. Please, just 10 minutes. Rittenhouse, the cafe near the park. I almost said no. I should have said no. But there was something in his voice, not guilt exactly, more like a man realizing the floor under him might not be marble after all. So at noon, I sat across from my ex-husband at a little cafe near Rittenhouse Square, where the tables were too small, the coffee was too expensive, and everyone looked like they owned linen napkins on purpose. Nathan had ordered tea for me. That annoyed me more than it should have. You still like chamomile, he said. I also still like being believed, I said. People evolve. He looked down at his cup. Outside, bare branches scraped against a gray sky. A woman in red boots walked a tiny dog wearing a sweater, and for one insane second I envied the dog. At least nobody was asking him to sign a legal statement admitting he was emotionally unstable. Nathan folded his hands on the table. No wedding ring now. No father hovering at his shoulder. He looked older than when I left him. Still handsome, still careful, but thinner somehow, like guilt had been quietly eating through the edges. My father shouldn't have approached you like that, he said. I laughed. That's where we're starting? Not, my father shouldn't be blackmailing you, but the customer service angle? His mouth tightened. You know how he is. Yes, I do, which is why I'm confused that you keep treating his behavior like weather. Warren isn't rain, Nathan. He's a man making choices. A couple at the next table glanced over. I lowered my voice, not because I was embarrassed, but because my daughter kicked so hard I had to press a hand to my side and breathe through it. Nathan noticed. Are you okay? Don't do that. Do what? Sound concerned after standing there yesterday while your father threatened a pregnant woman. He flinched. Good. I hoped it left a mark. He leaned forward. The statement is just to keep things from escalating. No, it's to make me lie. It says you misunderstood. I didn't misunderstand missing money. His eyes flickered. There it was, a small crack. I stared at him. You know something. I don't know anything for sure. That has never stopped your family from ruining my life before. He looked away toward the window. His reflection stared back at him, pale and uncomfortable. My father said the audit is political, he said. That the city is looking for a scapegoat, and if you get pulled in, they'll use you. That's sweet. Warren suddenly cares about my well-being. Should I send flowers or just a fruit basket labeled "Nice try"? Grace. No. You don't get to say my name like I'm being difficult. I asked questions 2 years ago. Then suddenly I was unstable. Then suddenly there was a video making me look like I was cheating. Then suddenly everyone you knew stopped looking me in the eye. His face tightened at the word video. I caught it. My pulse changed. What? Nathan rubbed his thumb along the handle of his cup. I shouldn't have brought that up. But you did. I only meant, where is it? He looked at me. The original, I said. Where is the original footage? His silence answered before he did. I leaned in as much as my belly allowed, which was less intimidating than I wanted, but still emotionally effective. Nathan, he swallowed. The security files weren't kept at the house. They were archived through the foundation office. Old server room. 18th floor. The cafe noise blurred for a second. Milk steaming, cups clinking, someone laughing too loudly near the register. The original video still existed. Maybe. Nathan looked scared now, which was new. He had looked sad before. Guilty. Defensive. But scared meant Warren had lied about more than one thing. Why tell me this? I asked. He stared at the table. Because I watched you walk away 2 years ago, and I told myself you were guilty because it was easier than admitting I was weak. That sentence should have healed something. It didn't. It just made me tired. I stood slowly, one hand on the table, the other under my belly. Nathan reached out like he might help me. I stepped back. No, I said. You lost that job. His hand dropped. Outside, the wind pushed cold air through the cafe door as someone came in. I buttoned my coat over my stomach. You want peace? I said. Tell the truth before your father buries it. Nathan's face went pale. Then his phone buzzed on the table. He looked at the screen. I saw the name. Warren. And when Nathan didn't answer, I knew this conversation had already cost him something. Camila Torres slammed my printed email onto her desk so hard that the little ceramic cactus beside her laptop tipped over and rolled into a stack of intake forms. Well, she said, staring at Warren's threat, that is either witness intimidation or the most aggressive fundraising strategy I have ever seen. I stood in her office with my coat still on, one hand under my belly, trying not to look as scared as I felt. Willow House hummed around us through the thin walls, toddlers crying downstairs, someone laughing too loudly in the kitchen, a dryer thumping like it had unresolved trauma. It was messy, underfunded, loud, and alive. And Warren Whitmore had just put a knife to its throat. Camila picked up the paper again. She was 48, Puerto Rican, 5 feet tall on a generous day, and somehow capable of making grown men apologize before they knew what they had done. Her office was a controlled disaster of grant binders, cold coffee, sticky notes, and one framed photo of her daughter in a graduation cap. Tell me everything, she said. So I did. I told her about the clinic, Warren's envelope, Nathan's silence, the statement calling me unstable, the threat to pull funding. Then I told her what I had never said out loud at work. The old transfers I found during my marriage, the edited security video, the way Warren turned my questions into evidence that I was jealous, emotional, unreliable. Camila listened without interrupting. That was somehow worse. When I finished, she leaned back and removed her glasses. Grace, why didn't you tell me sooner? I looked down at my hands. My nails were bitten short. One had a tiny chip of pale pink polish left from the baby shower Marcus's sister threw, where everyone guessed the birth weight, and I guessed, please just let her respect my bladder. Because I was embarrassed, I said. Because people believed him. Because after a while, when enough people look at you like you're crazy, you start checking yourself for smoke. Camila's face softened. You are not smoke. My throat tightened so fast I had to look away. She stood and closed the office door fully. The click sounded final. Listen to me carefully. If Whitmore Foundation is threatening your employment, our residents, or pending funding because you may cooperate with a city review, this is not just personal, this is retaliation. And if those old transfers are real, it may be fraud. My baby shifted. slow and heavy. Fraud. The word landed differently when someone else said it. Less like my paranoia, more like a door opening. Camila tapped the email. Do you still have anything? I have some old screenshots. Maybe emails. I don't know if they're enough. Then we make them enough. By lunchtime, I was sitting in the staff conference room with my ancient laptop open, a cup of ginger tea beside me, and 3 women pretending not to hover nearby while absolutely hovering. Tasha sat on the far side of the table folding donated onesies, her bruised cheek almost healed, her eyes sharper than she wanted people to know. You need me to fight an old rich man? She asked. No. Because I'm very pregnant, but I can still throw a shoe. I glanced down at my feet. I recently learned shoes are unreliable weapons. She grinned, and for half a second, the room breathed. Then my laptop froze. Of course it did. The screen showed my email archive from 2 years ago, loading with the urgency of a sloth in a weighted blanket. I muttered, "Come on, Margaret." Camila blinked. You named your laptop? She's old, dramatic, and only works when publicly shamed. After 11 minutes, 3 failed searches, and 1 emotional negotiation with the Wi-Fi, the first email appeared. From Warren. Grace, your confusion regarding foundation accounting is understandable, given your limited experience with nonprofit reporting. I remembered reading it the first time at Nathan's Kitchen Island, my stomach twisting, while Warren stood behind me with one hand on my shoulder, like a priest blessing in execution. Camila read over my shoulder and whispered, condescending little goblin. I kept searching. There were more. A calendar invite for a community renovation allocation meeting I had not been allowed to attend. A forwarded spreadsheet with shelter expenses moved under property development. Then 1 email from Warren to a foundation accountant named Diane Harper. Move the Willow House expense under community renovation. She won't understand the difference. The room went silent. Even the dryer outside stopped thumping, which felt dramatic and frankly helpful. Camila leaned closer. Who is Diane Harper? I don't know. She was gone before the divorce was final. Find her. My phone buzzed before I could answer. A text from Nathan. Don't contact me for a while. He knows we met. Below it came another message. But check the foundation archive list from 2022. Diane copied more than he thought. I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. For the first time since Warren handed me that envelope, fear was still there. But now it had company. Proof. Diane Harper agreed to meet me in Lancaster, only after making me promise I wasn't recording her, suing her, or secretly related to Warren Whitmore, which honestly felt like a reasonable screening process. I don't drive 2 hours for fun anymore, Marcus said, helping me into the passenger seat the next morning. Especially not with you at 8 months pregnant and angry enough to weaponize a granola bar. I brought 2, I said. For snacks? For options. He gave me the look he used on difficult patients, right before they insisted they were fine while actively bleeding. Grace. I know. I'll breathe. I'll hydrate. I'll not start a fist fight with a retired accountant in Amish country. Beautiful. Marriage is communication. The drive out of Philadelphia was gray and wet, the highway shining under a soft drizzle. I watched row houses turn into stretches of bare trees and open fields, my hands resting over my belly. My daughter rolled under my palm like she was trying to get comfortable, which made one of us. Diane had chosen a diner off Lincoln Highway with faded red booths and a pie case that looked like it had seen every human failure and judged none of them. Marcus offered to come in with me, but I told him to wait in the car. You sure? He asked. No, I said, but I'm doing it anyway, which is basically my brand. Inside, the diner smelled like coffee, fried potatoes, and old raincoats. Diane Harper sat in the back booth with her coat still on, both hands wrapped around a mug. She was in her late 50s, thin, pale, with short brown hair streaked with gray and eyes that kept checking the door. She looked at my belly first, then my face. You're Grace Miller. I am. You're very pregnant, I've noticed. Her mouth twitched, but the almost smile disappeared quickly. Sit down before you make me nervous. I slid into the booth across from her, which took the grace and strategy of docking a cruise ship. My belly bumped the table. The salt shaker wobbled. Diane reached out to steady it. For 1 second, we both stared at the salt shaker like it had survived something important. Then she said, Warren is dangerous. I know. No, she said sharply. You know he's cruel. That's not the same thing. The waitress came by. Diane ordered coffee she didn't need. I ordered toast because my stomach had accepted only beige foods since sunrise. Pregnancy cravings sounded cute until your body started behaving like a suspicious toddler with legal authority. Diane lowered her voice. I worked at Whitmore Foundation for 11 years. I saw things before you ever married Nathan. Money moved between programs all the time. Shelter funds, youth housing funds, maternal health grants. Warren called it flexibility. What was it? Laundering reputation into real estate. The words made my skin go cold. She opened her purse and pulled out a small flash drive, keeping it hidden under her napkin. I kept copies. Not enough to take him down back then, I thought. Enough to protect myself. Why didn't you come forward? Her face tightened. Because he ruined me before I could. Suddenly I was careless, unstable, a bitter employee with memory issues. Sound familiar? I looked down at my hands. Too familiar. Diane's voice softened. I saw what he did to you. The video, the rumors. I'm sorry. That hit harder than I expected. Not because it fixed anything. It didn't. But because after 2 years of being treated like the stain, someone had finally pointed at the man holding the brush. My throat burned. The original footage. Do you know if it still exists? She nodded once. Yes, Compliance Archive 2022, 18th floor server. The edited version came from internal security, but Warren requested the cut personally. I stopped breathing for half a second. Diane slid a folded paper across the table. Archive index, file names, dates, transfers, and emails tying Warren to the reclassification of Willow House funds. I touched the paper but didn't open it yet. Why give me this now? I asked. Diane stared out the window at the rain sliding down the glass. Because my daughter needed a shelter once. Not Willow House, another one. I knew what that money meant, and I stayed quiet anyway. Her voice cracked on the last word. I had walked in expecting a witness. I found another woman Warren had taught to be afraid. I reached across the table and covered her hand. You were surviving. So were you, she whispered. My phone buzzed before I could answer. Camila, I picked up. Her voice was low and tight. Grace, where are you? Lancaster. With Diane. A pause. Then listen carefully. Whitmore Foundation just suspended the grant, effective immediately. My hand tightened around the phone. What? And Warren's attorney sent a notice accusing Willow House of financial misconduct. He's trying to make us look dirty before the audit starts. Across from me, Diane closed her eyes like she had expected exactly this. My daughter kicked hard. I opened the folded paper Diane had given me and saw a line of file names, dates, and one folder marked Miller Incident, full hallway feed. Fear moved through me. Then rage took its place. Camila, I said, my voice steadier than I felt, tell the city we have records. I found Nathan waiting beside my car outside a South Philly grocery store, holding a manila folder in one hand and looking like he had aged 5 years since breakfast. Which was rude, honestly, because I was the one carrying a full-grown baby, a bag of pickles, and the emotional burden of his entire bloodline. Marcus had gone inside to buy antacids because apparently my daughter had decided marinara sauce was a personal attack. I had stepped out for air, one hand on my belly, the other gripping my keys between my fingers like every woman in America who has ever watched a true crime episode and learned practical posture. Nathan, I said. Tell me you are not stalking pregnant women in parking lots now. He flinched. I'm not here to scare you. Excellent. You're failing creatively. The sky was low and gray, the kind of Philadelphia afternoon, where every car looked damp, and every person looked personally offended by weather. Nathan stood under a flickering parking lot light, his coat collar turned up, hair messy in a way he would have found unacceptable 2 years ago. I need to talk to you, he said. I glanced toward the grocery store doors. You have until my husband comes back with the industrial-strength heartburn tablets. His eyes flicked at the word husband. Not jealousy exactly. More like the discomfort of a man seeing a chair he once abandoned, now occupied by someone useful. He held out the folder. I didn't take it. What is that? Copies from the archive list. Diane was right. My breath caught despite myself. Nathan looked down, then back at me. I went to the foundation office last night. You did what? I still had access. Of course you did. Rich families treat security like a suggestion with marble floors. He almost smiled. Almost. Then his face collapsed back into guilt. I found the incident file, he said. Not the video itself, it's restricted, but the index shows two versions, original full hallway feed and edited board review clip. The cold went through me so fast I forgot the ache in my back. Two versions. For 2 years, I had lived under one version. One neat lie with clean edges. Nathan's voice dropped. The edited clip was requested by my father. I stared at him. Cars rolled past us, tires hissing over wet asphalt. Somewhere a shopping cart rattled hard against a curb. My baby shifted under my ribs, slow and heavy, like she was listening too. You knew? I asked. No, he swallowed. Not then. But you suspected. His silence answered. I laughed once, and it hurt. That might actually be worse. Grace. No, don't say my name like it's a handrail you can grab when you're falling. His face went pale. Good. Maybe truth was supposed to bruise a little. He stepped closer, then stopped when he saw my hand tighten around my keys. I believed him, because he was my father, he said. And because if you were guilty, then I didn't have to admit I had failed you. There it was. Not an apology, not enough. But the closest Nathan had ever come to standing naked in front of the truth. I wanted it to matter more. Instead, I felt tired. You let me walk out of our home with 2 suitcases and a reputation your father set on fire, I said. Do you remember what you said? He looked at the ground. You said, I don't know who you are anymore. His mouth tightened. I did know who I was, I said. You were the one who needed a lie to recognize me. For a second, he looked like he might cry. A tiny, bitter part of me thought, great, now we're both leaking in a grocery store parking lot. Very cinematic, very inconvenient. Then Nathan's phone buzzed. He looked at it and went still. I didn't need to ask. Warren. Nathan declined the call. It buzzed again immediately. This time, he turned the screen toward me. Answer me now. Then another text appeared. If you gave her anything, you are making a mistake you cannot undo. My skin prickled. Nathan shoved the phone into his coat pocket like it had burned him. He knows. How? I don't know. Maybe the office. Maybe someone saw me pull the archive index. My stomach tightened, and not in the normal pregnant way. A low cramp pulled across my lower back, sharp enough that I had to grip the car door. Nathan reached for me. Grace? Don't. I can call. My husband, I said through my teeth, is inside buying antacids because unlike some men, he has follow-through. The automatic doors opened, and Marcus came out carrying a plastic bag. He saw Nathan and stopped. His face changed instantly. Not dramatic, not loud, just protective. He walked toward us. Everything okay? Nathan looked at him, then at me. No. At least he was learning. He handed the folder to Marcus instead of me, which annoyed me for half a second until I realized my hands were shaking. There's proof, Nathan said. Or enough to get proof, but my father is moving fast. My phone rang. Camila, I answered. Her voice came through tight and breathless. Grace, Warren's attorney just filed an emergency complaint accusing Willow House of misusing donor funds. He's trying to freeze our city bridge funding. For 1 second, the parking lot tilted. Then I looked at Nathan. What else is in that folder? He met my eyes. A name, he said. The security director who cut the video. By the time I got back to Willow House, Tasha was sitting on the lobby floor beside 2 trash bags of donated baby clothes, crying like someone had just told her safety came with an expiration date. That sound went through me worse than any threat Warren had made. The lobby smelled like wet coats, microwave noodles, and disinfectant trying its best. Rain tapped hard against the front windows, blurring the streetlights into yellow smears. A toddler was screaming near the stairwell because his mother wouldn't let him eat a sticker. Somewhere upstairs, a pipe clanked like the building itself had anxiety. Camila stood near the front desk with her phone pressed to one ear, her other hand gripping a folder so tightly the edges bent. When she saw me, her face said, "Not here, not now, not while you're this pregnant." I ignored it because my body had already become a committee of bad ideas. What happened? I asked. Tasha wiped her face with the sleeve of her hoodie. They said the new rooms aren't opening. My chest tightened. Camila ended the call and came toward me. Warren's attorney filed an emergency complaint claiming donor funds were mishandled here. The city won't release bridge funding until they review it. But they know he's retaliating. They suspect it, Camila said. They need documentation before they can move. Documentation. I had grown to hate that word. People could hurt you in real time with real hands and real consequences, and somehow the world still wanted a PDF before it believed you. Tasha struggled to stand, one hand on her belly. I can go back to my cousin's place. No, I said too quickly. She looked at me with red eyes. Grace, there's a waiting list. I'm not special. Yes, you are, I said. And so is every woman on that list. That's kind of the whole problem. My voice cracked, which annoyed me because I wanted to sound like a warrior and instead sounded like a tired balloon. Marcus appeared behind me with the folder Nathan had given us, rain on his jacket, concern all over his face. Grace, sit down. I'm fine. You said that last week while trying to put orange juice in the cabinet. That was one time. It was yesterday. Tasha snorted through her tears, and the tiny laugh loosened something in the room. I took the folder from Marcus and walked into Camila's office. Fine, I waddled. There was no dignity left in movement. At 8 months pregnant, every entrance looked like I was arriving to negotiate peace between nations and also pee immediately. Camila shut the door behind us. Inside the folder were copies from the archive index, dates, file names, and the name Nathan had mentioned, Paul Renner, former security director, Whitmore Foundation. I read it twice. Do we know where he is? I asked. Marcus pulled out his phone. Nathan says Renner took a private security job in Camden after he left the foundation. Camila's eyes sharpened. Left or was pushed? With Warren, those are usually the same door, I said. A cramp pulled low across my back. I froze. Marcus noticed immediately. Grace. It's nothing. Camila pointed at the chair. Sit. I don't want to sit. I don't care. Sit with your revolutionary pregnant self. I sat. For 30 seconds, nobody spoke. Rain hit the window. My daughter shifted, slower this time, heavy and present. I pressed both hands to my belly and breathed the way the childbirth instructor had taught us, even though that woman had been entirely too cheerful about pain. Camila crouched in front of me. You do not have to destroy yourself to prove Warren is dangerous. I'm not trying to prove he's dangerous, I said. I'm trying to stop him from making everyone else pay for what he did to me. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Then something made me answer. A man's voice came through, low and rough. Grace Miller? Yes? This is Paul Renner. I heard you're looking for the full hallway footage. Every sound in the office seemed to drop away. I sat up too fast and Marcus put a hand near my shoulder without touching me, ready in case my body staged a formal complaint. Paul exhaled. If Warren knows I called you, I'm finished, but I kept a copy. My throat went dry. Why? A pause. Because what they did to you was wrong, and because he's doing it again. I looked at Camila. Her eyes widened. Paul said, meet me tonight, public place, 30 minutes. After that, I'm gone. The call ended. I stared at the dead screen in my hand. For the first time all day, the room felt still. Then Marcus said, absolutely not, and I said, get the car. Marcus drove like a man trying to obey traffic laws while emotionally disagreeing with every single one of them. The meeting place Paul Renner picked was a 24-hour diner near 30th Street Station, bright enough to expose every bad decision and public enough that nobody could quietly disappear. Rain streaked across the windshield. My belly tightened every few minutes, not painful exactly, just enough to remind me that my daughter had not approved this field trip. You know, Marcus said, glancing at me, most childbirth classes don't include covert evidence exchanges. That's because most childbirth instructors lack range. He didn't laugh. His hands were tight on the wheel. I reached over and touched his arm. I'm scared too. His face softened, but only for a second. I'm not scared because you're weak, Grace. I'm scared because you think being strong means walking straight into every fire with a tote bag and swollen ankles. That shut me up, which was rude because he was right. Camila was already waiting when we arrived, sitting at a corner booth under a buzzing light, wearing a black raincoat and the expression of a woman prepared to sue weather if necessary. She had brought a city compliance officer named Marlene Cho, who looked calm, sharp, and deeply unimpressed by drama. I liked her immediately. Paul Renner came in 7 minutes later. He was bigger than I expected. Mid-50s, broad shoulders, shaved head, face worn down by the kind of stress that doesn't photograph well. He paused at the entrance, scanned the diner, then walked over with one hand in his coat pocket. Marcus shifted closer to me. Paul noticed. I'm not armed. Marcus said. That's exactly what armed people say. Paul looked at him for a beat. There. He slid into the booth across from us and set a small black drive on the table beside the sugar packets. Nobody touched it. For a second, we all just stared at that tiny piece of plastic like it was a bomb. A prayer, and a middle finger in one convenient format. Paul cleared his throat. Full hallway feed, original timestamp, metadata included. Also the export logs showing Warren requested the shortened clip. My hands went cold. Marlene pulled on gloves and placed the drive into an evidence bag. Very official, very tidy, completely surreal next to a laminated menu advertising pancake specials. Camila leaned forward. Why now? Paul rubbed both hands over his face. Because he called me yesterday. Wanted me to say the original file was corrupted back in 2022. My stomach dropped. And were you going to? He looked at me then, really looked. I thought about it. I respected the honesty more than a clean lie. He continued, voice lower. Back then, Warren told me you were trying to destroy his family. He said Nathan was devastated. He said the shelter money issue was just you misunderstanding accounting. People love saying I misunderstand things, I said. I'm starting to feel academically underestimated. Camila gave me a look that said, not now, but also a little bit yes. Paul's mouth twitched, then faded. I cut the video. I knew it didn't show the whole story. I told myself it wasn't my business. The diner noise seemed to recede. Plates clinked somewhere behind us. Coffee poured. A waitress called someone Han in the distance. I pressed my hand over my belly. Do you know what happened after that? He looked down. I can guess. No, I said. You can't. Marcus's hand found mine under the table. I lost my marriage, my home. Friends who smiled at me for years suddenly looked at me like I'd brought mold to a dinner party. I sat in my car outside a grocery store one night because I didn't know where to go, and I thought maybe everyone was right about me. Paul closed his eyes. I didn't say it to punish him. Or maybe I did a little. I was pregnant and furious. Moral purity was not currently one of my symptoms. Marlene zipped the evidence bag. Mr. Renner, are you willing to provide a sworn statement? Paul nodded. Yes. Then my phone rang. Nathan. I put it on speaker without thinking. His voice came through, thin and panicked. Grace, don't go home. Marcus straightened. Why? My father knows about Renner. I don't know how, but he knows. He sent someone to your apartment building. My blood went cold so fast I felt dizzy. Marcus was already standing. Camila grabbed my coat. Marlene called someone from the city office, her voice clipped and fast. I looked at the table, at the evidence bag, at Paul's gray face. Then Nathan said, quieter. Grace, I'm sorry. I should have believed you. For 2 years I had imagined hearing that. I thought it would feel bigger. But all I could think about was the crib box in our living room, the tiny yellow onesies on the couch, and Warren Whitmore putting his hands on the life I had rebuilt. Marcus helped me stand. My back cramped hard enough that I grabbed the edge of the booth. Everyone froze. I breathed through it, teeth clenched. Hospital? Marcus asked. I shook my head. Apartment first. Grace, our evidence is here, I said. But our life is there. And for once, nobody argued. The man outside my apartment had one hand near our doorknob, and the other holding a phone aimed at the crack beneath it, like he was trying to photograph the private life I had just barely rebuilt. Marcus moved before I did. Step away from the door, he said, calm in a way that made the hallway feel smaller. The man jerked back. Mid-40s, damp trench coat, cheap leather shoes, rainwater dripping from his hair onto the carpet. He looked like a private investigator ordered from a clearance bin and delivered with free anxiety. I stood behind Marcus with one hand on my belly. My back still cramped in slow, ugly waves. The original drive was with Marlene now, sealed and logged. Camila carried only the copied folder against her chest, but somehow it still looked heavy enough to bend her shoulders. What are you doing at my door? I asked. He glanced at my stomach. I'm here on behalf of Whitmore Foundation Council. Of course he was. Warren didn't just send threats. He sent weather systems in loafers. Camila stepped forward, soaked from the rain and furious enough to warm the hallway. You mean you're trespassing on private residential property to intimidate a pregnant witness? I'm serving notice. Through the gap under her door? Marcus asked. Bold choice. Marlene came up the stairs behind us, not even breathing hard, and showed her city badge. Your presence has been documented. Leave now, or I call police and add this to the review file. That changed his face. He left quickly, muttering into his phone as he hurried down the stairs. Inside, our apartment was untouched. The crib box still leaned against the wall. The yellow onesies still sat on the couch. My mug from breakfast was still in the sink with a cold ring of tea inside. Ordinary things, sacred things, things Warren had no right to scare me away from. Marcus made me call the OB triage line before anyone said another word. I hated that he was right, which had become an annoying theme in our marriage. The nurse told me to drink water, monitor the cramps, and come in if they became regular or stronger. See? I said after hanging up. Very reasonable. Marcus looked at me. You say reasonable like it's a slur. My phone buzzed. Nathan. I almost didn't answer. Then I did. My father is speaking tonight at the donor reception near Logan Square, he said. His voice sounded thin, scraped raw. He's going to announce Willow House is under internal review. He wants the board to freeze everything before the city responds. Camila closed her eyes. That son of a... Careful, I said. My baby is collecting vocabulary. She has already survived more litigation than most adults. Nathan kept going. There will be board members there, city partners, a few reporters. But Marlene doesn't need a public scene. She needs the board served before Warren controls the room. That was how we ended up at a private ballroom off Logan Square an hour later. Not storming a stage, not giving speeches, not acting like truth needed a spotlight to exist. I wore the only black dress that still fit me and sneakers because my feet had formally withdrawn from society. Marcus walked beside me. Camila carried the copied folder. Marlene and a city attorney went ahead of us, quiet and official, the kind of quiet that made rich people nervous. Warren was not at the podium yet. He was in a side conference room with 3 board members, adjusting his cufflinks while a staffer arranged place cards outside. He looked up when we entered. For 1 second his smile stayed in place. Then he saw Marlene. Nobody invited you, he said. Marlene set a sealed notice on the table. The city is temporarily freezing all pending partnership actions involving Whitmore Foundation, effective immediately. 1 board member went pale. Another reached for the document with shaking fingers. Warren's eyes cut to me. This is absurd. No, Camila said. Absurd was threatening a shelter and calling it donor oversight. Nathan stood near the door. He looked like he might be sick, but he stayed. My father knew the video was edited, he said quietly. I saw the archive records. I'll give a statement. Warren turned on him. Sit down. Nathan didn't. That was the loudest thing he had ever done. The city attorney spoke next, calm and brutal. We also have a sworn statement from Paul Renner confirming the original footage was altered at your request. No gasps, no dramatic crowd, just paper sliding across a polished table and Warren Whitmore realizing, in a room too small for performance, that control had finally left his hands. He looked at me then, hatred tucked under all that old polish. You still think this makes you worthy? 2 years ago, that sentence would have opened me. Now it only clarified him. I put one hand on my belly. No, I said. I was worthy before you had an opinion. Outside the conference room, glasses clinked and donors laughed, unaware that Warren's world had just cracked without a microphone. My water broke 3 days after Warren Whitmore lost his foundation chair, which felt dramatic. But honestly, my daughter had always shown excellent timing. It happened at 2:17 in the morning while I was standing in our kitchen eating peanut butter from a spoon and pretending that counted as protein. Marcus found me frozen in front of the refrigerator, wearing one of his old t-shirts and the expression of a woman who had just received a very aggressive calendar reminder from biology. Grace, he said carefully. I looked down, then back up. I think your daughter just filed an eviction notice. For one beautiful second, he stared at me like English had left his body. Then he sprinted into action, grabbed the hospital bag, dropped his keys, picked up the keys, dropped the bag, and somehow put on 2 different shoes. This was the man who could handle a multi-car accident calmly, but labor turned him into a Roomba with anxiety. By the time we reached the hospital, dawn was smearing pale blue across Philadelphia. The streets were wet from overnight rain, and the city looked rinsed clean, even if I personally felt like a haunted parade float. Labor was not cinematic. It was fluorescent lights, ice chips, Back pain, nurses with calm voices, Marcus counting my breaths badly, and me threatening to haunt him if he ever said, "You're doing great," one more time. At some point, Camila texted 12 red heart emojis and one knife emoji, which felt emotionally accurate. After 11 hours, my daughter came into the world screaming like she had a formal complaint. They laid her on my chest, slippery and furious and impossibly small. Her tiny hand opened against my skin. Marcus cried so hard, the nurse handed him tissues without even looking, like she had seen hundreds of strong men become soup near newborns. "Hi, Elena," I whispered. Her name had belonged to my mother, who taught me that softness and strength were not opposites. I wished she could have seen her. 2 weeks later, Willow House opened the first of the 6 new rooms, not because Warren had a change of heart. Men like Warren did not have changes of heart. They had legal consequences. The city froze Whitmore Foundation's contracts pending a full investigation. The board removed Warren from all operational authority. Diane Harper gave a sworn statement. Paul Renner did too. The original video was reviewed, and the lie that had followed me for 2 years finally lost its teeth. The shelter received emergency bridge funding from the city, and 3 new donors, who apparently preferred helping women without using them as decorative proof of morality. Groundbreaking? No. But 6 doors got locks. 6 beds got sheets. 6 women got to sleep without listening for footsteps. That was enough to make me cry in the laundry room, which was inconvenient because I was holding a basket of towels and wearing a nursing bra that had the structural integrity of a wet napkin. Nathan sent a letter, not a text, not an email. A real letter, handwritten, left at Camila's office because he knew better than to come to my apartment. I read the first page while Alina slept against my shoulder. He wrote that he was sorry, that he had failed me, that believing his father had been easier than protecting his wife, that he did not expect forgiveness. That was the only smart thing he wrote. I folded the letter halfway through and put it in a drawer. Not because I hated him, because I didn't need the rest. Some apologies arrive after the house has already burned down. You can acknowledge the ashes without moving back in. On the first day the new rooms opened, I brought Elena to Willow House, wrapped in a yellow blanket. Tasha met us in the hallway, round-bellied and glowing with the exhausted pride of someone who had survived more than anyone should. "She's tiny," Tasha said. "She has my attitude, though, so emotionally she's about 46. Tasha laughed and touched Elena's little foot. "This baby has been through more legal drama than my Uncle Kevin." I'm afraid to ask. You should be. The room behind us smelled like fresh paint and donated crib sheets. Sunlight came through the window in a bright square on the floor. Downstairs, someone was making coffee too strong. A toddler was yelling about applesauce. Camila was arguing with a copier and losing. It was not perfect. It was alive. I stood there with my daughter in my arms and realized Warren had been wrong from the beginning. He thought worth was something men like him handed out from behind polished tables. He thought he could revoke it with a rumor, a video, a threat in an envelope. But worth was not his to give. It was in every woman who walked into Willow House carrying a garbage bag of belongings and still said thank you. It was in Diane telling the truth years late but still telling it. It was in Camila refusing to blink. It was in Marcus assembling the crib wrong twice and loving us correctly anyway. And it was in me, long before Warren Whitmore had an opinion. 6 months later, I took Elena to Rittenhouse Square on a Saturday morning when the trees were just starting to turn green again. She was asleep against my chest, one tiny fist tucked under her chin like she was plotting something peaceful but firm. Marcus walked beside me pushing an empty stroller because Elena had very strong opinions about transportation, and most of them were illegal under stroller law. Willow House was full now. All 6 new rooms had women in them. Tasha had given birth to a baby boy who screamed like a fire alarm and smiled like he knew rent was someone else's problem. Camila had finally replaced the copier, though she still insulted the new one, just to keep it humble. The investigation into Warren was still moving, slow and ugly and wrapped in legal language, but his name no longer opened doors the way it used to. Nathan testified. Diane testified. Paul testified. I did too, with Elena in a carrier and spit up on my blouse, because justice apparently does not wait for dry cleaning. Sometimes people asked if I felt vindicated. I did, but not in the way they meant. Vindication wasn't Warren losing his chair or donors whispering his name like something spoiled in the fridge. It was walking into Willow House and seeing a woman lock her own bedroom door for the first time in months. It was hearing laughter from the kitchen. It was Elena growing up in rooms where no man got to decide a woman's worth. I looked down at my daughter's sleeping face and kissed her forehead. "You were born after the fire," I whispered. And somehow, that felt like a blessing.